Is anybody waiting in Mexico?
Oh, I mean, let's find out.
Is Rosa from Mexico waiting?
Well, like 14 people are waiting. Apologies, it's my fault.
14 people?
14 people.
How many from Uzbekistan?
I mean, that's difficult to say. We'll find out when the email comes through in a bit. This is where you don't get this kind of level of professionalism with
anybody.
Or the sportsman, what's they called? Last tackle. It's a good name, that one. It's a good name. We're slightly to the side. I don't know what's happened. Right? Yeah. It's because we had 4 chairs last week, and anyway, I'm hidden half by the new issue of Forty20 magazine out this week. Friday. Look out for it in your
Culture Club on the cover.
Like John Watson in the '88 Cup final when Wimbledon beat Liverpool, and he said the crazy gang beat the Culture Club. But how cultured was Bruce Grobbelaar? That's the big question. The first time I went to Anfield, and the only times I've been to Anfield are to watch rugby, but the first time was in 1993 because it was a school trip, and we got time off in the afternoon if we went, and it was the All Blacks. I've heard of them playing the north of England. I don't know anyone who's playing them. We didn't pay any attention to it because it was rugby union. We didn't understand it, but we did get told off for chucking bog rolls on the pitch because we're your bog standard comprehensive, and they were all posh schools around.
Oh, your bog rolls.
Well, exactly. We weren't Quakes. No future England captains in the outward.
You couldn't kick penalty goals and drop goals.
No. I mean, obviously the greatest drop goal in Wakefield's history was scored by Nigel Wright against Leeds, and he is a former Outward Grange student. Just a quick bit of housekeeping because I don't know where we are. If you want a Tonga flag ahead of the series, which starts soon, St Helens Club shop gone on sale for £1. So there you go. Goes well with pride flags as well. As James has pointed out.
Don't ask any Tonga.
No. We're here, we're live. It is Monday. It is the 11th of September. It's another exciting weekend of Rugby League has been and gone. People have said some stuff. Squidris Elba has said Harry Ketch, which apparently is Uzbek for good evening. It could be swearing. It could be, but we'll take the risk. Ken says bad week for Wakey. Just made it look like the tide was turning. That die was cast a long time ago. Who knows, if Dave Trafita had been out at the start of the season,
it would have been the same outcome.
Because we needed Luke Gale, but he's not as sexy as a story, and you can't call him a legend. So.
And he didn't walk out in the floodlit empty stadium and put his boots on the centre circle.
But he's nothing if not performative, isn't he?
I don't understand, there's 2 games left.
There is going.
Gone.
His other half, significant other, is with child.
Okay.
So,
I wish I hadn't done any McDonald's yet, by the way, because I know that Steve Mascott should have won Tweet of the Week, and I don't know if he has. I don't know if you saw it on Saturday night when they found that they found the prisoner, didn't they? The prisoner escaped.
Yes.
And he said, "Where's Denny McDonald then?" Oh no, he didn't win it. It was Liga. Liga Express have given Tweet of the Week to Liga Express.
It's been a busy week.
Maybe me.
No sign of him yet.
No. Where do we start this? I don't know. This is like when Mark was on the programme. He would always save the bits that he knew people wanted to listen to until later. So we'll do Leeds in Crisis in a bit.
Again.
reprise.
We could start with St Helens and Leigh.
Yeah, I mean, that was an exciting game.
Because I did think that was a really good game and an indication of what we might be able to expect in the playoffs in terms of its intensity. Never lessened for the full 80 minutes. Bit of controversy at the end. The Tom Briscoe no try could have given us a different outcome. But I enjoyed every minute of it. I thought it was a fabulous game. Couldn't take your eyes off it.
I think it was encouraging for Leigh as well, because some of their performances post-Wembley have been a little bit disappointing, haven't they? And actually that was a sign of, when it comes to the crunch, it's going to be those playoff games. And they can certainly match with St Helens. I know they didn't win at the end of the day, but
that was without John Asiata as well, who we know has been...
I think if you're a Leigh fan, you probably come away, whilst they didn't get the win, you come away encouraged that your season's not necessarily over.
Lamb said that, didn't he? He said, I loved that, and that we're exactly where I want us to be in terms of our intensity and level of performance, and they could have nicked it at the end.
Entertaining game from start to finish. Could do with seeing less of Derek Beaumont every time they do something. I think Sky needs to ease up on that. Not interested in seeing him jumping up and down in all his histrionics, but as you say, brutal. Is this why we say playoff intensity? Was it just a notch below that, perhaps?
I think
getting close.
I think it was playoff intensity.
Good.
Yeah.
And I also think that it highlighted, if anybody is going to get Saints, and let's not beat around the bush, they know how to win playoff games and grand finals.
It's like they were Leeds.
So to rule them out would be ridiculous. But the one thing they didn't have, I didn't think, was an absolutely dominant pack, because they haven't got Walmsley and Parsley in particular, and Siranin. So the guys where you rotate them and they're relentlessly powerful, they can't do that. They've got to play a little differently. And I thought it showed that they probably were a little bit vulnerable in that area. But Leigh were great. Leigh were fantastic.
Yeah, I regretted carrying on doing work whilst watching the game because I just couldn't watch the game properly enough because I was still working, but because it deserved my full attention, that game.
Well, the Saints chocolate kit deserved your full attention.
Yeah, two interesting kits, weren't they?
Little clash, maybe? Or darkish?
I think they were alright.
If you were watching black and white, you might.
Yeah. But England still have a black and white telly. Some of our listeners probably do, actually.
But actually, when you look at the league table, OK are on 5th now on 28 points, Leigh on 30 in 4th. So they probably only need to win one game. I don't know the points. What's the points difference like between OK and Leigh?
Playing 80 for Leigh and 35 for OKR.
Yeah, so I think. But that's what I was just going to say. With Leigh playing Wakefield at home this week, and then at home to Wakefield and at home to Wigan, they don't necessarily need to win that Wigan game, do they?
No, they just need to.
Chester out.
It'll be interesting to see though what they do with that final game of the season, won't it? Because we know that they don't have a big squad. We know what they did on the semi-finals. The week before the semi-finals of the Challenge Cup, they played the full strength. So that would point to them probably playing the full strength.
Well, it might be that Wigan need to win that to win the League Leader Shield. So do you sit there and go, we don't want to play our limited hand too early, so enjoy yourself, Wigan.
It'll be interesting.
But we need to get to that week because
Absolutely.
there's still some issues. I mean, we don't know yet who is in the 6 for sure. We don't know who's finishing 4th and getting a home tie. We don't know who's winning the League Leader Shield because all 3 of them still have a chance. You'd have to say the way Wigan are playing at the moment, they would be favourites, rightly so.
Wigan play Castleford at home this week, don't they? And then are away at Leigh. So.
But it's just that they've only conceded 1 try in the last 3 games, and whilst their attack is clearly on song, it's the defence that you should be looking at this time of the season.
Yeah. There'll be historic documents on Friday because in lieu of you've got the last game at odds and things. That'll be the last programme for a Wakefield game in Super League because Wakefield don't do them. So Leigh do them. So stock up on them.
Leeds do it. So Leeds got Castleford at home last round. So that'll be the.
I mean, just on Wigan, they probably benefited because they played OKR the week before. They played the final, didn't they? So that was a bit of a gimme. And then they played Leigh the week after the Challenge Cup. So they probably benefited a little bit from that.
James Bell was outstanding, says Tony.
He was.
Paul says he's been outstanding all season. Maybe could win Manorstill. He's not going to win Manorstill.
I'll tell you what, there's a few candidates. The great thing is that there isn't one obvious standout. There's about 6 really obvious standouts, and I don't envy who's going to end up choosing that. Because Bevan French again gave a masterclass.
Well, ultimately it comes down to the points, the cumulative points, doesn't it? So it isn't a decision as such, is it? As far as I understand, it's just whoever's top of the table.
I think it's. Do they still have to have a little panel convened to
I don't know. My assumption was it's just a league
Depends
table.
on who wins it.
It's a league table, and it's where you finish at. If you finish at the top. So.
But no, I think Lachlan Lamb's been fantastic this year. French has been brilliant. So yeah, Bell would.
See, Bell can't win it because all the points will go to Wellesby.
Well, Wellesby has been amazing this year. As he probably is ready to graduate from Young Player of the Year to Man of Steel.
NRL. Keep throwing that in until it happens, and I can go. I told you so. Let him know anything.
There were some rather exciting games in there this weekend in their first round of the playoffs, but we'll get to that with the help of British assistant coaches
and Dom Young.
And players.
Dom Young.
Wakefield's own Dom Young
was magnificent.
But the WF12 postcode derby is back on next year, says Andrew. Look on the bright side. Come on, you Rams. I mean, it's all going on in the Championship, isn't it, next year? Batley, Wakefield and Tuesday. I mean, I'm saying Wakefield are down. They are down now. I mean,
yes.
It's going to take
Well,
some collection
it's
of miracles.
It's going to take them to win a game away from home, which they haven't done all year, and it's going to take Castleford to lose both of theirs. But I don't see much changing. I think 4 points with 4 to play for it's too much. This weekend was the one, unfortunately for me, that Wakefield got relegated.
Yeah, that we said, didn't we, last week, that game that Castleford had was a massive game for them, and I think that'll get them home now.
And I know we're jumping about a bit, but Wakefield scored their points very late in the game against Catalan, and it looked as it was going to be their 7th game of the season without scoring. And again,
still not broken that record.
That's not going to change in the next 2 weeks.
I mean, that is the thing now, isn't it? Because it is over. Just break the record. You may as well get a record out of it because
What? Don't score in either of the last 2 games.
Where's Betfred? What's the odds Betfred? I don't think. I mean, I've not seen the game. I wasn't there, but I don't think there's anything you need to say about it. Catalan's beat Wakefield and done in the first.
I think Catalan's needed to
after the
get over the 2 defeats that they've had. I don't think they played as well as they're going to need to if they're serious about either winning the League Leaders' Shield or getting to Old Trafford. But you have to put a stop to something. So they'll be happy with that. They've got a relatively easy game this weekend. But I don't know. I think relegation is done. I don't know. I don't know where Wakefield go from here because David Fafita's already left. Apparently, there's 3 or 4 players that have been earmarked for other teams. We don't even know if there's a parachute payment for next year, do we? Because the new TV deal will kick in and there's less money.
We're going to watch football now because 1,000 people watched that Wakefield Holbury game on Saturday.
That's only because you mentioned it on here.
Yeah, obviously. Phil says, does anyone really care about winning the League Leaders' Shield? Well, Castleford did. They did. I think after being pilloried on this programme for just doing that. But
I think this is a conversation we've had every year this comes up, and saying what we need to do is name it after somebody and make it prestigious, because it's only not because we don't make it such. If it was in Australia they have the JJ Gilton and Shield. He was a great administrator from the very early days. That was one of the people that ensured that Rugby League was being played.
Is that their League Leaders' Shield?
Yeah.
But I've never heard of it.
And it's massive. It's like
so for Super League then, if we're naming it after an administrator synonymous with Super League, James knows where I'm going with the Maurice Lindsay Shield. There you go.
I thought it was the Steve Ganson Shield.
I thought you were going to say Nigel Wood.
No, right.
But if you seriously, if you want to name something after Rob Burrow, for example,
because we're not going to change the man of the match at the grand final. We bang on about this all the time.
If you invested in the League Leaders' Shield, his name, it's a much more prestigious thing overnight. And talking to Matt Pete on Saturday, when he was trying to claim that his team had a difficult game, very unpredictable team, especially when they held the ball. He was talking about how important it was to him that they won the League Leaders' Shield, that it's a measure of consistency, that the top of the league means a lot to them, that how they perform in the next 2 games he thinks is vital to take into the playoffs. He wasn't dismissing the fact that coming top meant something. He was saying that he actually wanted it. Now, again, it's only us that say it's a hubcap and it doesn't mean anything, because the game itself hasn't invested in it that it's a major prize.
I take your point. I mean, if you named it after somebody with merit, then it probably raises it a level. But ultimately, still, the season boils down to the grand final, doesn't it? And winning that.
But try and tell Huddersfield in 2013 and Castleford in 2017.
Yeah, but it means more to
looking
a club,
back.
Yeah, it means more to a club that haven't had success, as it were, on that stage.
Yes. So it's not going to happen. But let's say Leigh managed to accrue enough points to win the League Leaders' Shield. How good would that be for a club like Leigh? Yes, it would be very important.
Second League Leaders' Shield for Adrian Lamb.
But I'm using that as an example.
Why not?
That clearly for clubs that win it incessantly, it might not have the same kudos unless it is named after someone where.
People
it's very difficult though to win the League Leaders' Shield because you have to be consistent in order to win it. So for a club that has not won it before to win it is almost more of an achievement in a way.
So what do we need to do? Make it a 5-team playoff, which means that the team that wins the League Leaders' Shield gets the week off.
Just for me, don't tinker with don't tinker with
Well,
stuff.
we've
Leave
had,
stuff as it is.
we've had 5.
I know, but we
playoffs,
talked about
and
that.
they're very competitive. But do you do something like that to make the League Leaders Shield more valuable? That only one team gets a material advantage. It's almost like getting the immunity pin in MasterChef.
The easiest way to do it is put money on the table.
All right.
If you win a load of money for winning the League Leaders
20
Shield,
grand for winning the League.
20 grand. Probably needs to have £200,000 attached to it.
This is rugby league.
Yeah. If you put money behind it, then it has kudos.
Grand behind the bar.
Yeah.
Bring back club call. Tony's mentioned Huddersfield making a huge financial loss despite getting
£2.5 million quid.
I've not looked at the figures because I'm not an accountant, so there's no point in me looking at them. It's like when today the articles come out. Channel 4 had great viewing figures, yeah, but in comparison to Warrington, no one does any analysis.
They've lost
numbers.
£2.5 million,
But they've got an owner who can
which
afford
is
to.
about $1 million more than every club has lost a degree of money, and some of what you lose will be determined on what your costs are. So if you're a club that only employs 3 people, that's a limiting factor, and it's probably why you're not at the top of the league. But actually, your loss is going to be less because you're outgoing. So I think we've just done a piece in a magazine. I think it's 6 clubs have lost more than $1 million, but Huddersfield have lost $2.5 million.
But in total, they've lost a
12.
lot less than Wasps.
12 million across
Was it
Super.
90 Wasps.
Yeah.
Wow.
Just spend it all.
But also, it shows that you don't need to you don't need to invest much in rugby league, even in a club that is making a loss. If you're a sporting entrepreneur, this is a sport that is ripe for investment, even though everyone's making a loss.
Here's the easy example, because it's the easiest part of rugby league to be successful in, and that's no disrespect to those teams who are, because they're growing. York have won back-to-back Women's Super League Leaders Shields. Got to the grand final last year. Probably will do again this year.
And host it. Their men could still make the playoffs.
They don't need to put millions of pounds into that to have success, which the people outside don't know, because it gets into the local paper and they'll see them on the front of the paper, and Sinead Peach sleeping with the League Leaders Shield last night and stuff.
Is it valuable in the women's game, the League Leaders Shield?
It's as if you're York. I think it's always
But again,
been, hasn't it? Yeah.
but why isn't that named after one of the women players? You know, we've
Well,
made
why
a big...
isn't the one with the match of the
Yeah,
grand final of the Challenge Cup named after it either?
I'm just
Because there are
saying.
plenty of them. I don't know. But you can have success in women's rugby league, in wheelchair rugby league, without having a massive amount of money put in there, and you get kudos for it. This is why the Leeds in crisis thing is a bit... When people say the club, I think, well, no, it's not. I understand. Of course, I'm not stupid. The men's team is by far the biggest element of Leeds Rhinos, but there are other parts of it which are successful, and those are the parts of the sport which will probably be the growing areas going forward when the next TV deal comes around, when this comes around, whatever. So, of course, everyone who supports Leeds wants the men to win everything, but there are elements of the club which are also successful in their own way.
The women's game was fantastic, by the way. On
Another good close game. Wigan
were
they're
magnificent.
getting there. Not close. They're getting there.
It was very much like the cup semi-final, and the last sort of... It was a very, very hot afternoon, and the last 10 or 12 minutes, they clearly physically expended all their energy, but defensively, they were absolutely fantastic.
But not on the telly or anything.
It was good, though.
Just jumping back to Huddersfield, I have not seen that story, so okay, there's a limit to what I can comment on, but I know they obviously have invested heavily off-field in terms of their facilities, haven't they? I believe they acquired the YMCA ground and things like that, so I don't know whether that was accounted for in those set of accounts in terms of a land acquisition or something like that, whether that's a contributory factor to the...
Would that land acquisition now also have a value in the accounts?
It would, yeah.
So, again,
I'm not an
know the
accountant,
value
so
of
I
that.
don't understand how it works.
I
You're
just
an
said that
accountant.
so that I could agree with you that clearly I know nothing about it.
Yeah, if you're an accountant, support Huddersfield Giants.
Yes,
I mean,
tell us.
Tell us.
I've got an A-level in business studies, but it was a long time ago now.
Oh, I think I have someone.
Profit and loss
But
account.
if you're talking about investment and return on investment, then you're right. The women's game is right for it because you want, if you're an investor, you want growth, and that's the growth in the game, isn't it?
I'm sure that's what York have seen, because it just makes complete sense, especially in a city where football clubs are rubbish these days. find some success.
And particularly if you own your own ground, which you know a number of clubs don't do, but you need to have more events, and if you're not going to have double headers, then it's another event that you can host at your stadium to generate more income through your turnstile and everything else that goes with it.
Zoe Hornby's really good, isn't she?
She is now getting back to full fitness and actually scored a try off her own kick. How many prop forwards? Grubber for the post.
A bit like how Brodie Croft did the other day.
Yeah, but Brodie Croft I don't think is a prop forward.
No.
So yeah, she took the ball into the line, grubbered it through and won the chase to the ball. And you go, man, that's talented. Or woman, that's talented. She was great.
Is this the bit where they come good and win the grand final again? Mind you, they've got a difficult semi-final.
Well, not only that, but they have quite a young team, particularly in the halves, and they're playing Hannah Butcher there at the moment. But it's probably going to be one step too far. But the semi-finals are a double header, aren't they, on Sky? But not in the same place. They've got one game and then the other, which is brilliant.
Shona Hoyle, Woman of Steel. I'm just going to throw that. I mean, I've not seen hardly any games. I'm just going to say that as a kind of. I don't have a vote anyway, so I can say whatever I want.
You know who does have a vote, though, don't you?
Well, she can make her own mind up. It's her birthday today, isn't it?
It is.
I said to her.
I sent her a message.
Is it? Is it any different to any other day where you get a lot of free stuff?
It's just cake, I think.
Feathers have been promoted apparently.
They have to Super League 1.
Yeah, so well done to Fev.
And London won the Women's Super League South Grand Final, ending Cardiff's reign of 2 years.
I think a reign of 10.
Telford Raiders won the Midlands Super League Women's Grand Final.
I mean,
just to bring it up to date.
I don't understand why Brogan Cherm's not involved in the England South, but that's just me. Barrow beat Leigh.
LA Allroad signed for Huddersfield.
I saw that. The moves are happening again. And they'll get reversed. So Leeds won 24-0. St Helens beat Warrington 56-6, securing themselves the home semi-final. York beat Huddersfield 60 points to 4. Castleford 4, Bradford 50, and Featherstone 28, Salford 18. So
Leigh didn't get promoted.
No.
But Featherstone did. But Leigh now are into the playoffs for the.
See, that's what confused me about last year. Last year was all down to one thing. So is the 2 teams being promoted?
Yeah, it's going to 8 teams next year. So nobody's being relegated.
That's why when I was looking on the operational rules, I couldn't find anything. Because I did look for them yesterday. That was the Women's Super League. The semi-finals are in a couple of weeks. On Sky. On Sky, and then the final.
And the final will be played at the highest finishing team, which means if if York beat Wigan, they will host the final.
Is it all right?
Which is now the week before the men's final, so it's a standalone event that doesn't stand in the shadow of the men's final, which is also good.
How long until the women's final is played as a curtain raiser?
Well, next year.
I don't think it could be long, do you?
No, I don't think so. Not now the Challenge Cup has been played.
And the World Cup obviously followed that road.
Yeah. And as we know, Alex Ferguson, he likes rugby league, but he doesn't like rugby union, so he would be happy with it. And I'm sure the Glazers still speak to him. I mean, Man United do.
Well,
great PR example.
By the time we go to Las Vegas, the Glazers will realise how important rugby league is, and will say, "Can we have some more games, please?"
What happens if one of the teams in Vegas is in the World Club Challenge?
Well, clearly Vegas will take precedence as far as the NRL are concerned. 100%. Actually, I have to say that the promotion started for that, and you look at the teams that are going there and the games that are going to be, and I'd be getting a bit excited about what this may do for the sport in America. We're not going to crack it by the USA international team. It is going to be maybe taking a prestigious event once a year. Well, I know people that are looking to go from here because they want to be there for the very first time. That
wouldn't surprise me because it is. I mean, I've been. I didn't think it would be for me, and it wasn't for me really, Las Vegas. But I can see it appealing. It's like the big brother of Blackpool almost in a way, isn't it?
You sounded like Leon Price.
Slightly.
Bondi. It's not as good as.
When I say big,
Vegas,
I mean,
it's on a par with Blackpool.
No, it's just full on. It's absolutely full on. And if you're going to go over there for a holiday and you like your rugby league, then it's perfect.
They're going to have a week's worth of sporting events with an Australian flavour. So the wheelchair are going to be playing 3 games. They're talking about maybe a boxing bout involving an Australian fight, UFC, I think, or whatever it might. Well, you can imagine.
There's always plenty of rugby league players who have a fight, weren't there? Boxing, legitimate, not
But you can imagine, can't you, going over there to see all of that and staying up all night in the in the pokey machines.
And
It does have great potential.
the NFL, the NBA, Major League Baseball to an extent, when they come over here, I don't think the NBA has for a while. The NHL, they go more to Scandinavia because it makes more sense. But they're not sold on international teams, are they? And I know we would like our international element.
I think if you took
South City could be a brand as much as
I think if
New
you took
York
international teams who were the top echelon, what they want and they're used to is elite sport. They're not, they don't want the USA playing Canada in what is effectively an amateur competition. But they don't need to know Brisbane Broncos or South Sydney. What they need to know is that if they go and watch those two teams play, they're going to belt the hell out of each other. I watched a bit of NFL Red Zone last night, which was back for the new season, and at least 2 or 3 of the touchdowns were scored as if they were tries. They weren't just breaking the plane; they were actually diving to the floor to make sure that they did. And I was saying to the good lady, once they get to see rugby league, there's an instant link there.
Well, this is why, Kevin has mentioned some other thing that is going on. And by the way, I don't see the problem with people if they want to watch the other thing that's going on, just to slag it off all the time. You do that, that's fine. I don't think that's a bad thing to do.
You watched it, didn't you?
Do whatever you want.
I watched bits of it, I did, yeah.
You did. You were impressed and thrilled by the handling skills on this.
Yeah, I didn't say that, but I was watching the Leeds Wigan game on delay and the England Rugby Union game, and it was a competition between the two. And actually, the Rugby Union game was attracting my eye a little bit more than the Leeds Wigan game. But obviously, it was becoming quite one-sided, the Leeds Wigan game. But that was only because, and I tuned in after Curry had been sent off to see what the Ferrari was, and then it was.
Should he have been sent off?
Well, by their laws and interpretations, yes. There's a separate debate as to whether their laws and interpretations are,
because there was
right.
a huge clash of heads in the Salford Warrington game on Sunday, and it's like, is everybody all right? HI if you need it. Carry on, lads.
Right.
It was an accidental clash of heads. How do you legislate for that?
Well, they have legislated. Quite clearly. In that, what they're saying, their argument is that he has a clear line of sight, and he has a duty of care. He can't make contact in the air, which he doesn't. He has to wait until he's on the ground, but it's a split second, and he has to
turn
come
his
in lower.
head the other way around.
No, he has to adjust his tackle height, so he has to come in lower. And that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to encourage a lower tackle height. Now, whether you can argue whether that's right or wrong, to me, I thought it was an accidental clash of heads. In rugby league, it would be. I'm not sure whether it would be a penalty.
Be an HI if you need it, or player.
Yeah, but we have seen things in rugby league that have been adopted from rugby union in relation to foul play, and I'm not suggesting that we will go down that road, but who knows?
Why were we even discussing?
Exactly, it's rubbish.
I just saw his face there.
No, this is my phone. He decided to do something which confused me. Tony said 1300 at Leigh yesterday, watching the women's game. That's great. And he also says well done to Fev. No, we haven't talked about Warrington yet. Don't panic. Warrington's coming up. People, yeah. We're never going to get the coverage of rugby union, Kevin. It's just never going to happen. It was interesting listening to Anthony Broxton on the Hypothetic podcast about the 1992 World Cup, and I've come to the conclusion, because I was on it once, that podcast. And
I think you were at the 1992 World Cup.
It was my 12th birthday. I wasn't there, but I was on the podcast once talking about the merger, and whether it would have changed anything. And my conclusion would have been no, probably not, because I've got no imagination. And I'm not sure, having seen England won the Cricket World Cup and won the Ashes, England won the Rugby Union World Cup, which, proudly 20 years on, I've still never seen the drop goal. So it doesn't count.
Apparently it's an art form.
Apparently, yeah. Who knew? Certainly when you see Golden Point, it's terrible art.
Do you think it's got anything to do with Kevin Sinfield being in the coaching ranks?
If they lose, yes.
But people can berate. But I think what you can appreciate is top level sport. And whilst there was no try scored and it doesn't appeal to me, the kicking ability to drop those goals is something else. But
by a former rugby league player.
But if you make our drop goals worth 3 points, you probably see more drop goals in Super League.
Well, that's why there should only be one.
Yeah, agree.
Or two in Australia if you do it from the next door neighbour's garden.
So my theory is, anyway, even if Britain had won the World Cup in 1992, it would have changed anything. Because it would have had a kick-on effect for a bit. But is there a bigger interest in international rugby union now than there was before the World Cup?
No, but I
think there's more hype about it.
I think that at that moment in time where Rugby League was, with 70-odd thousand at Wembley, on the BBC on a Saturday afternoon, Gary Schofield in his scrum cap, he still blames John Devereux.
I think they did on the podcast as well.
I think to have beaten Australia at that time, bearing in mind we'd seen the 82 Australians come over and completely change the game, the 86 Australians replicate what the 82 ones had done, and we were still catching up with them by then. 90, we won one of the tests, and we were going, actually, the Aussies are at the peak of their powers. If we can get up to that level with our Ellery Hanleys and Gary Schofields and Sean Edwardses and Jonathan Davises, if we'd have won in 92, turned them over at Wembley in front of a 71,000 crowd, I think the domestic game would have kicked on from that. And that was leading into the time where we were just starting to hear rumours of Super League. The game was just starting to go on satellite television. I think the amount of money that we would have been able to garner if we'd have been World Cup winners, and those players would have been paraded, which they would have been at the time. I know we joke about, if they'd won the World Cup now, they wouldn't have opened Trafalgar Square for them. I can remember the PR for that game was in Trafalgar Square. There were posters of Martin Offiah that's been written about, and on all the tube stations. I think if we had won that game, however small that flicker would have lasted, there would have been one. That was just about the time that great Wigan team was almost starting to come to an end. But don't forget, in '94 they went to Brisbane and won the World Club Challenge, which was to have won a World Cup at that time as well. It would have meant something.
I think you're right. I think I was 9 at the time, so I can't exactly speak from first-hand experience or knowledge. But what I would say is, all they ever do with those situations, whether it be the Olympics or World Cup wins or whatever, is create an opportunity.
Yeah.
And off the back of that opportunity, you have to invest heavily in order to capitalise on it, and invest heavily quickly.
But we did in '95 when we got Diana Ross to open the World. So you're going from, you win the World Cup in '92, you've elevated yourself. Wigan win the World Club Challenge in '94. It's elevated the domestic competition. You've got a World Cup then at home. Diana Ross is opening it. It's elevated it. '96, you've got Super League coming in. It's almost as if, had we won the World Cup, that's a little building block.
Yeah, but it was an upward trajectory. But then, I suppose we could make a whole podcast about this. What happened?
I think people already have.
What happened in the early 2000s and probably onwards? The crowds grew, and then they take a club like Bradford, clearly they're in Championship.
The quality of overseas player coming in was much higher. But I do think and
that, I guess, overtook where we were taking players from Wales, which obviously that doesn't happen.
I think the Melbourne Test, when we beat a full-strength Australia in the lead up to that World Cup final in '92, people started saying maybe we can match them. We'd had years of going, they're playing a different sport, and in virtually 10 years we'd got the gap to almost as close as it could be, and to be, 5 minutes away from winning the World Cup. Had we won it, I do think that would have had an impact. It was on grandstand. It was a really big Saturday afternoon. I can remember being there thinking, I was doing said book with Mr. Schofield about his season. The reason for doing it was he was going to be the captain that lifted the World Cup.
But the World Cup's just been on BBC, so I know they didn't get to the final. And you're right, perhaps in what you say. I'm still not entirely convinced. Do
you think if
panacea that people?
No, but I think this one that's just passed. If we'd have got to the final, we wouldn't have won it. The Aussies were too good. But if we'd have got to the final, there would have been a real groundswell of.
Well, they very nearly won it at the previous World Cup in 2017, didn't they?
But that wasn't here.
I know it wasn't, and it probably doesn't have the same.
And all 61 games weren't on the BBC. No. I think again that was another moment that our mistake was we couldn't beat Samoa. It was a fantastic game against Samoa, but we needed to win it because that Saturday afternoon we needed the men to be running out of Old Trafford, and it didn't happen.
It's where we saw with the. I don't know. It's not quite the same as the men winning the World Cup, but the wheelchair team winning the World Cup is that because that whole narrative was built up over the BBC, because people had seen it. People had never seen it before, and now you've got a test match, the World Cup final rematch being played at the Leeds Arena. I don't know how many people are going to be there. It's going to be a world record, whatever it is. They've done the ticket prices really well. They've sorted out tickets for accessibility, which wasn't available at the start.
I think the other thing about wheelchair is that is a glimpse of what it could have been in '92, because wheelchair World Cup final didn't really have a legacy programme after it. But what's happened, almost in spite of rather than because of, is you've got a documentary coming out on BBC Two. You've now got a huge international coming up in, which you can call the rematch, which is going to again be on the BBC. We all know a little bit more about who these persons. A lot of people know who Seb Bashar is now. They didn't know him until that one night in Manchester. They know who Tom Halliwell is, and I think the participation levels in wheelchair would tell you that there has
gone up.
And you're going from a very low base, so I get that. But a 75% increase in people playing is still a 75% increase in people playing. So I do think that that moment in '92, which is not what we intended to talk about on this podcast,
doesn't matter,
because we don't ever intend.
Yeah, but probably interested in the other games.
I'm just delayed talking about Leeds.
Leeds, exactly.
But,
we know what you're doing.
But I do think that was a moment in time where we did lose a potential spotlight that we were 5 minutes away from
with regards to Kevin's point on coverage in newspapers and stuff, I go back to the podcast we did last year in Dewsbury with Ian Laybourne, where we asked him about getting stories into papers and how hard it is these days, and maybe a Dom Young or someone like that can be the catalyst for that in the future, because they are exciting.
And he's going to, all being well, and he's going to be over here playing for England against Tonga in that 3-match series. Fantastic.
What a result in the Wheelchair Super League. Hull FC 34, Halifax the champions 22.
It's massive.
What a result that is.
And it does mean that Hull can make the playoffs at the expense of Halifax.
What a signing Martin Norris has made. Playoffs coming up. Grand final coming up the day after the
grand final, which is going to be on Sky as well, which is fantastic.
Yeah. At least we all know one referee in wheelchair, says Carsten. Yeah, David Butler. Yeah.
Don't mention it. Go to his head.
Have we mentioned Warrington yet? No. Let's talk about Warrington, because they lost to Salford on the putting off even more. They lost to Salford on the telly. One thing that has to be pointed out about this game, and it's all right, chief executives of rugby league clubs having to go at former referees on Twitter, and then players for said club liking the tweet by the chief executive. But what's very interesting is one of the players liking that tweet was one who took a bit of a dive in the game and was called out rightly on the commentary for doing so. So trying to, in effect, con a match official. Is that legally a sound way of describing it?
I'm not getting involved in that debate at all, but I would say that, but for the incredibly exciting ending to the game,
it was terrible.
It was dire.
the standard, yeah.
I mean, I know we have to use the phrase "do or die," and I think it is obligatory now that
attritional.
But the number of mistakes, not least two that led to Warrington scoring, and I think they could probably still be out there now and wouldn't have scored. It was terrible.
Yeah, I was saying to you earlier.
Warrington flattered to deceive Wolves.
No, they're back now. Oh no, not back now.
I was saying to you, I've only watched about 35 minutes of it. The first 35 minutes, I actually didn't think it was as bad, but that's probably because I was forewarned that it was bad. If you know what I mean. So
well, Kevin says the effort was there, but too many unforced errors at crucial times. So I think that can go for both sides.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I saw one of the people.
The ending was sensational.
Oh, yeah.
And could I just say that the player who has not received enough credit this weekend is Sam Stone.
What a try! What a finish!
Because nobody said. Everybody said, "Oh, great pass from
he was a
Brad
Chris
Singleton,"
Joyce
because it was.
Yeah.
Great evasive skills from Joe Burgess, because it was. But how fantastic was Sam Stone to be the man in support?
Great finish. I saw someone replying to Ian Bleaser's tweet trying to blame the match official for missing Josh Felix's boot in real time, thinking, oh, for crying out loud. Just, if you saw that in real time, you think, as a non-match official, I'm sending it up as a try because it looked like a try. But then you look at it on the replay, and it's boots on the line, so it's not a try.
Must be in the second half, was it?
Yes,
Yeah.
I think it.
Was it just before half time?
I can't remember.
I watched the first 35 minutes.
They kicked off they had a scrum with about, I think it was about 20
it was just
seconds
in the last
left.
minute. Yeah,
Kicked off the scrum, great kick, puts it down, but unfortunately, as he's put it down, his boots on the line.
I think that was the only move in the game where Warrington put 2 passes together.
And a kick. Is there anything else to say about Salford and Warrington? I don't upset anyone at Salford.
It sets
Bad
up,
game from Salford's point of
it
view,
sets up an interesting two final rounds of the season. Because it means Leeds can still make the play. No,
it's a big game though this week because they're away at OKR, Salford, aren't they?
Yes, massive.
You know, so for Salford, they need to win that. But it's so tight actually for that top 6. Leeds are obviously gone now.
No, they're not. You say that, but if Warrington and Salford both lose their games and Leeds win both of theirs,
Leeds are gone now.
Leeds are gone.
In the same way Wakefield's
it's
gone.
as likely as Wakefield. Yes, I know. I'm just saying mathematically.
Yeah.
No, Leeds are gone.
So you've got Salford, Warrington, OKR. It's a bit of a 3-way playoff for 2 teams, isn't it?
Yeah. And Warrington have got St Helens this week.
Yeah.
Salford have got Hull KR. So it'd be interesting.
Warrington then play Huddersfield away.
Yes, which is going to be interesting because again, are Huddersfield going to trying to go out in a blaze of glory because season tickets will be on sale for next year? Or?
I mean, I think I'd go back to something I've said before, is that it doesn't really matter in my view, that I can't really see either any of... Well, I'd probably forget OKR for a second. I can't see Warrington or Salford competing with the others in the play.
I think the one thing that game showed us yesterday was that whichever of those teams get in the playoffs, or both, if it happens to go their way, neither of them are going to win the competition.
Did you see Brad Singleton hit somebody in the head?
I didn't.
He got a match for it.
He did. Should he have been Simbin though? Because it comes up in the head.
Yes. In fact,
but it was consistently more because he said to the Warrington player.
Yeah, but it seems to, and I heard what he said, and he said I thought it was careless rather than reckless, and so I'm going to operate the same consistency that I did. However, at the beginning of, particularly was last season, any contact with the head, 10 minutes in the sim.
Yeah, but we backtracked from that, didn't we? After about 10, 12 games.
But it is a mixed message. Like on the Saturday night you're watching Rugby Union, you're thinking, an accidental clash of heads, immediate red card, or not immediate because they had 8 minutes to decide apparently.
Well, that's what I was trying to suggest, really.
I'm watching Rugby League and somebody has hit someone in the head and they've stayed on the field.
Well, that's why I don't think that's a sustainable situation long term.
No. Because
you make a choice. As a defender, you make a choice in making a tackle. And that's what Rugby Union are trying to do, is encourage that lower tackle height.
So any attack to the head, careless or reckless, should involve a period sat on the side.
I don't necessarily agree with that, but if that's the way the game goes, it wouldn't surprise me, is what I'm trying to say, because the interesting one was it the Callum Watkins tackle?
Yes.
Yeah,
from the week before, which to me, every day of the week is just a penalty.
Yeah.
So I was surprised if that's the tackle he got banned for, he got banned, or he got, what was it, grade B, I think, so it'd be similar.
And
one match.
Appealed it.
And failed in the appeal.
Still, whereas Salford had, three appeals were successful.
Yeah.
I think the difficulty with it is that it is actually direct contact to the head. The question is the level of force.
Singleton's was more forceful, I would say.
Yeah, it's difficult because I've not seen it. I think you're looking at indicators. Is it a clenched fist? Is it an open hand? No. Does it swing? Is it rising?
No.
Is it always rising?
But it is initial contact with the head.
Level of force. What happened to the person that's been hit? Is his nose bust as a direct result of it? For example, all these are all factors that they look at, whether you like that or not.
Carson wants us to talk about Matt Duffy.
What would he like us to say?
Is he any good? Is he a first grader? Well, he is. He's playing Warrington. But
I mean, from what he's rocks and diamonds from what I've seen at times. He can put on some incredible stuff, but it's just that level of consistency, isn't it? And that's probably why they're mid-table. It's because he, like the rest of the team in many ways, they're not consistent in their performances.
I think that's a perfect summation. I think with his speed, like Jai Field, he can do things that other players can't, and you would want that in your team because that is potentially your X factor. But balanced against that is if you're defending on your own line, you're virtually a man line.
It's a challenging position at full back as well, isn't it? Because you are exposed.
Yeah, I think you've also got to look at the teams that he played for in the NRL and why he's not playing for them anymore. And I think they decided it was too much of a risk, particularly as they were teams at the bottom of the league.
But that's what a coach is for, isn't it? A coach has got to get somebody who shows rocks and diamonds to show more diamonds and less rocks on a regular basis. That's the purpose of a coach, isn't it?
I think if he'd signed for Leeds, it would be terrible recruitment, because that's what everybody would say. Obviously, that's what everybody would say.
Well, I think Warrington fans. That I'm assuming that's a Warrington fan.
No,
that's
from Switzerland.
Oh, sorry, it's from Switzerland.
We've almost got Switzerland.
Yeah, I was going to say it looks a little bit like that flag.
No, all I'm saying is that he hasn't come under as much scrutiny for his performances and whether it's a poor signing as he would have done if he'd necessarily signed.
I think
quickly.
Possibly, yeah. I think the other thing though is they've got Ratchford there. Why they have persisted with him, Dufty, and they've not ever moved Ratchford into that position.
I just think that Ratchford's wasted in the centre.
They didn't play at 6 when they needed a 6.
So I did see him drop the ball, which led to a try in that first.
I think that was just symptomatic of the game.
Yeah,
but also I always thought Ratchford was a potential loose forward later in his career as well.
Now we spoke about Rugby Union. Have you heard about the football at the weekend? Big game in the National League North.
Yes.
Scunthorpe United versus Buxton. Buxton winning goes into stoppage time.
But Buxton winning A with 10 men and B against the league leaders.
Yes, the mighty Scunthorpe. Chucks it down. Rain. Match abandoned.
4 minutes out of 100 to go.
With 10 minutes left?
No, 4.
Yeah.
They played 96 minutes.
Oh, please.
They've got to start again.
Ridiculous.
Well, ridiculous. It was abandoned in the first place.
Friend of Radio Yorkshire, Tom Feeney.
Well, why was it abandoned? The rain?
Yeah.
Was the pitch flooded?
I mean, I assume so. I'm not saying. The game will be replayed in full.
Wow.
Speaking of, Ian Watson's Huddersfield Giants.
What was the score? Sorry,
2-1 to Buxton.
I suppose the probably difficulty with football is it's one goal, isn't it?
Yeah.
One goal.
Yeah.
I did the classic points and I said it was over.
And it changes the result. I suppose what else can you do?
Huddersfield Giants. I mean, they don't have a crowd because it's not been given. Playing against Hull KR, who obviously don't have a crowd either. Do Huddersfield get enough criticism for this season compared to the fact that they're 2 points below massively in crisis Leeds?
Wasn't that the start of our podcast last week?
We talked quite a bit about Huddersfield.
I think they've got away. I think they've got away with it because they
Leeds and Warrington exist.
The pressure eased a little bit when they pulled away from the relegation zone, didn't it? And people stopped talking about Huddersfield at that point. But they've got issues, which I think you're Huddersfield, and you know all about them.
I was speaking to one of their coaching staff on Saturday, and I said, "He must be disappointed because clearly you had last year to build on, and you've got a better team this year." And he said, "Have we got a better team?" And I said, "Well, a lot's been made about your recruitment," and he took me through 4 positions where the incumbent is not as good as the person who was left. Now, I'm not naming him or those players, but he said, for example, do you think that Isan Masters is a better player than Ricky Lutelli? Now, not from the outside looking in, Masters has not had the same impact clearly that Lutelli has, even in the early season at Leigh before he got injured. He was the chances he was making for Charnley, even the way he played at Toronto, he is a top line signing, Ricky Lutelli, one of the best centres in the game. So I sort of get that if you go through all of Huddersfield's recruitment and where they are in the league, it's probably a bit of a falsehood to say you've recruited better this year, therefore you should have been better.
I'm sure I read a quote at the beginning of the year though about them spending as much as they've ever spent.
Oh, they have, is the quality the same?
Well, but then one of the I would say one of the reasons given an interview that Ian Watson would have given, and one of the reasons why Huddersfield probably appointed him was because he was good at bringing on players that perhaps weren't your top line players, and that's trying not to be disrespectful, but they probably weren't earning as much money as they could have done other players could do in those similar positions at other clubs, for example. And that's how he was demonstrating how good he was as a coach by getting performances out of players that perhaps wasn't as expected. So if you've got a coach that's really good at doing
Absolutely.
that, why can't you do that with that squad? I'm not so sure about that. I think it's about the makeup of the
I think
squad.
you're right, because Sam Halsall, who was deemed surplus to requirements at Wigan because they've got a grade 3/4 line, I think he's been one of their best players this year. And Watson would need to take credit for developing him.
Now, are they doing the right thing in not being sentimental in not re-signing Jermaine McGilvray? Because I know it's easy to write an article saying that you keep him on, he's a legend, and he is a legend. But he's a genuine one, not just a made-up tag.
And again, I think that depends on what his salary cap value is. Have they got a young player coming through, or are they going to sign a young player who they think they'll get better value out of at this stage of his career? Because he's not going to cost us as much. He's going to work up to the level of McGilvray. He's been a magnificent servant for the club, and 250 tries now in his career is fantastic. But every club has to make a decision about the jigsaw pieces of the salary cap, and it may not be about his ability. It might be how many games is he going to play, because he's missed a few this year. How much do those games cost us per game? Is that and I'm going to use the word luxury that they can no longer afford?
And I suppose from Jermaine's point of view, is he going to get a contract elsewhere? I would imagine he probably would. And well, how much is that club likely to pay? Well, some clubs would be prepared to pay quite a bit for somebody of his experience.
I mean, they might bring Dom Young back. One that got away.
We shouldn't take anything away from Hull Kingston Rovers.
We shouldn't.
Stuart says, how much of a force could Hull KR be in the playoffs? Obviously, they had the massive disappointment of Wembley, getting it back to level, losing in Golden Point. But here they are. They're in the top 6. They're looking good. Jordan Abdul's back.
Salford at home this week and Wakefield away. So
I think they could do what Leeds did last year. With all that, but I think they've got Jesse Sue coming back, which is really going to help beef up the pack. If they can keep all their key players fit, Jordan Abdul's back, and again over the next 2 weeks he's going to get fitter, and that's another option that you'd want to have within that 17, because his kicking game on when it's on is as good as anybody's in the league. If you can add that to where they already are and what they've already got, they've turned around their Wembley form.
And we saw how they've played against Wigan this season.
Then I would say if they've got everybody fit, there's no reason why they can't finish possibly 5th and turn over a couple of teams away from home. It won't bother them that they're playing away from home.
Abdul was really blowing though, not fit at all yet.
No, he isn't. But he's got 2 more rounds to get fit, and then he can be a real influence in the playoffs.
So as the table stands at the moment, it's 3rd Saints, 4th Leigh, 5th Hull KR, 6th Warrington. So that would be Leigh versus Warrington, wouldn't it?
Ooh, tasty.
They'll repeat the Challenge Cup at the moment, but obviously Hull KR tonkered them the other week at home.
Kevin says Huddersfield need to keep McGilvray at the club if they can as a coach, because he's Huddersfield through and through, and you need people like him.
I don't think he's any ambition to be a coach. I think he's been quite honest and open about that. He's not looking to go on the coaching staff, I don't think.
Castleford beat Hull, which
says more about
killed off Wakefield. Well, yeah, again, so the same questions about Huddersfield we attach to Hull, and this is the Jake Connor paradox. So he leaves Hull and he goes to Huddersfield. He's not improved Huddersfield. Has he weakened Hull? Well, they're pretty much where they were before anyway, so I don't know what the paradox is. There isn't one.
I think you can make
Hull are a massively disappointing and underachieving club. To say they're from this big city, they've got a big stadium. They obviously spent the cap. Hull FC, yeah.
You're not talking about another club?
No. Which one? Oh no, that's still to go. It's still to go.
I'm not even going to get involved
No,
in
no,
that.
but
I think the
2 Challenge Cups, well done to them, but being in 1 grand final, they were pathetic in that.
the thing about Hull, I think you can look at Hull KR and Hull. Hull KR are where they are at the moment, partly because of the foundation that Tony Smith laid, who took them to within 80 minutes of a grand final and made sure that initial recruitment of younger players and developing them into the force that they are now, Willie Peters has taken to another level. I think Tony Smith can do that at Hull, But this is the season whereby they're going to have a massive change, because it's the third year running that they've run out of steam with 2 or 3 months to go, and that's partly to do with the players that have been recruited before Tony Smith under Brett Hodgson and Leigh Radford. They went for a big physical presence but limited engine, and for the third year running that's cost them. I suspect that, I mean, I don't know what to make of the signings of Franklin Pele and Jade Knockenball, because they are big bodies. They're going to give them some physical presence. I just don't know if, again, you know, they can't get into the Canterbury team, and Canterbury are woeful. But Tony likes projects, so they might be what he's looking for to make them have a more physical presence. I think you can't judge what he's doing at Hull until next year. And it's a real shame they're losing Jake Clifford, because I think they were hoping to build whatever they were going to do around it, and he has been their shining light this year, and he signed a 2-year deal, and there was a clause in his contract that said if anybody came back to get him, they couldn't stop it, they wouldn't stand in his way, and they couldn't. But if he'd have stayed for next year, I'd have been confident that this was the start of Tony changing. Time is the issue we need to talk about, because clearly the next side you're going to debate, and I'm clearly not. Time is an issue, and I do think that Huddersfield, I think, have had the time for Ian Watson to get the squad he wants. What did we say last week? 21 players have been signed under his regime at the moment. So he has got more of what he wants than Tony Smith has at the moment. So I think when you're looking at those two and where they are, one you can say has underachieved, one the jury's still out.
Straight down the camera and say, what a performance. Well, obviously the performance of Saturday, Halifax beating Toulouse.
It was actually. That was a fantastic performance.
We'll come on to the Championship in a moment. So Leeds are in crisis again. Leeds men in crisis. Wigan 50 points nil. I mean, it's hilarious, isn't it? Because you're watching it and you're thinking, can they get 50 later on? And they did. Wigan are quite good, aren't they? Before we say Leeds are crap and everything's crap about Leeds and everyone should be sacked and they should raise Headingley to the ground, Wigan...
Are they a big club still?
Wigan are quite good. And they continue to be quite good.
I think perspective is always difficult, because clearly you're looking at an 80 minutes and you're reading as much into that as you want to read into it, and it's hilarious for everybody on the outside. Wigan went to Catalan 2 weeks ago. Catalan are a good team, so if we accept Leeds not such a good team, and they beat them 34-0.
I bet you're just glad John Davison's not here this week, because you came under a bit of pressure last week. You'll be under even more pressure this week.
I thought I handled it all right. I'm under pressure.
You've got to keep you on time. But
if you're going to beat the best, and at the moment I would say Wigan are the best, because they've scored over 100 points in the last 3 games, conceded 1 try. So if you say they are the benchmark, that they've beaten Catalan by 34 points at home 2 weeks ago, who were one of the team below them on the table, they're the side. So if you're going to play the best, you've got to have your best players playing to match them. And it isn't an excuse, but that was a very young Leeds team. I only have one question, because I'm not going to defend them, because there's no point, because it's 50-0. There were some fans in the Leeds South Stand singing "You're not fit to wear the shirt" to a very young team. If any of them are joined us tonight, I would like to know which players were they aiming that at, because I felt that was completely unjust. You can be upset at the fact that you paid your good money and your team haven't delivered, but I'm not sure that is justified in any way whatsoever. I mean, and if you're going to tell me that you think Jack Sinfield isn't fit to wear the shirt, then I'm not sure.
What's hilarious is the clamour to get him in the first team. I'm thinking, let him develop. Don't rush him. I know they're having to rush him at the minute.
I mean, I think, and you're quite right. You can talk about what has gone wrong at the club with people like Nanny McDonald and all that kind of thing, and I think that's a separate issue to saying there were 8 kids in that team.
Sorry, I mean, keep interrupting you.
Tell me that they're not fit to wear the shirt.
Well, I would just say on Jackson Field, to me, the Leeds season was written off when the Blair Costin went. That was the sign for me, and that's not to say Blake Austin's been the answer to Leeds' prayers, by the way. But
because he's not there, he is.
It just doesn't. I don't understand. I didn't understand the reason. I didn't understand the timing of it. It almost seemed like we've written the season off. We don't think we're going to make it. Let's now. And if you're going to go down that road, that is the time to blood somebody like Jack Sinfield to give him that first team opportunity.
I just think
because the academy system and the reserve system's not great.
Yeah, when they let Austin go, I don't think they'd factored in that Caesar might not play again this season because of a head knock in training. And then Jack Sinfield's in.
Richie Marr was already injured by this point, wasn't he? Though?
So Jack Sinfield isn't in necessarily because they feel he's ready to go in. Their half-back combination against Bevan French and Harry Smith, who arguably would say are the best two half-backs in the game at the moment, was Morgan Gannon, who is not yet a standoff and may not be, and Jack Sinfield, who by Leeds' own admission they don't think yet is ready to play in the first team. It's probably not a surprise.
No, but
it's the magnitude of the defeat, not... There are reasons behind it. Then you ask questions, quite rightly, why was Austin... Why did he want to leave at such an important stage? Why has McDonald not wanted to come back? And those are questions that need answering.
I think when you talk about the spine all the time, don't they? So if Richard Mann is already injured, then they know that. Why would you get rid of one of your spine players, Blake Austin, at that stage of the season? I appreciate they would have realised that Caesar may have then subsequently got injured, but they'd already lost Lehman, who was another spine player who was gone, which was a choice. So, and they don't have a captain, which I think is a...
They do.
Do they have a captain?
Yeah.
It's Cameron Smith, isn't it?
He does the toss every week. He's interviewed before the game every week. They've just got this Australian attitude that they want to focus on a leadership group. Their captain is Cameron Smith.
But is he named as the captain? Because all teams have... Well,
he's in League Express when I'm doing a match report.
Well, most teams have a leadership group, so that's not a
No, he's the captain. He does the toss.
But you do need to have a single voice at times from the player's perspective. But I think
the captaincy is only an issue when they lose 50-0 at home. It's not when they beat St Helens.
Well, this was the question I was going to ask. How many times have Leeds lost heavily this season?
Well, that one half at Warrington in the first game of the season, and I mean they've still got a positive points difference after losing. So
this is not some kind of you're losing every week 16-0 like Hull did doing it. And the other question would be, and this is to Carson because he'll know. Is there a German word for when Harry Newman went to the Wigan fans and it was chalked off the try? Is there a German word for that moment?
Well, the Wigan fans certainly made up for it from that moment onwards, singing "Harry, Harry, what's the score?" as he kept standing behind the posts.
I think some of the exasperation, though, as I was telling you before, the shows that if you compare Leeds to, say, a Wigan and St Helens, similar structure in terms of their youth structure and the players that they can bring through. They've had a lot of success, Leeds, over the last
won the Academy Grand Final last year.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm talking about the first team. If you go back,
they clearly have some kids.
They've had a lot of success as a first team, and then over the last few years, they've had far less success, and that is difficult for fans to come to terms with when you're used to success year in year out.
Absolutely, that sense of entitlement.
But mentioned the T word that I saw was bandied about on social media, transition. That people don't like that word, and I get that because each year your squad changes, and there should be a natural turnover. I think we've talked before about St Helens. I think one of the reasons why St Helens have been so successful is they have changed 2 or 3 players year in, year out,
but
gradually.
What will be interesting, and I think we've mentioned it on here before, is Saints will go into transition.
So at some
when
point
Roby goes,
it'll start at the end of this year because Roby and Louis McCarthy-Scarborough will go, and they've been very important.
Walmsley's getting older.
Walmsley will go. Percival will go, Makinson will go, Lomax will go, which will be they're irreplaceable players. And yes, they signed some very good players. That's going to get harder.
But that's where you have to have.
But it's good. That recruit. I was saying to somebody over the weekend who was sending me a text, laughing basically, which is fine.
He's not like this.
No, he wasn't. He didn't. He daren't ring at the moment. The days of take him as an example. 1987. Neither of you were even born. Leeds were very, very good. Leeds didn't get relegated on points difference, virtually on the last day of the season. For the start of the following season, Lee Crooks had been signed for a world record fee. Gary Schofield had been signed for a world record fee. You can't do that anymore.
Oh no, absolutely not. No.
So and we're going to get less and less fish from the NRL pool who are, you said, why were the crowds so high in 2000? Because you'd paid great money to go and watch Jamie Lyon against Leslie Vinocola. And with the greatest respect, Leeds have been criticised by their own fans for signing Matt Frawley. That's the same Matt Frawley that just scored a try for Canberra in a playoff game.
Yeah, but it was rubbish at Huddersfield. So
but that's the top level you're going to be able to recruit at in terms of players who are available, playing in a side that's at the top of the league in a playoff game. So you're right. There will be transition, and you won't be able to change in the way that we've previously. Be very interesting.
But ultimately,
we're going to doing it well at the moment.
When you look down the league table and looking at the teams, they still remain Wigan, St Helens, and Leeds are probably the three most successful teams in Super Leagues since Super League's been about. And then you throw in Catalan over the last few years that have gradually improved.
That's 5 years.
Yeah. But beyond that, when you look at Warrington and the money that they've got and the support that they have, they've got their own stadium and their underachievement. And then you look at the likes of Hall, as I was jesting earlier on. They're in a hotbed place of rugby league with a load of youngsters playing in that city. Yes, they don't own the stadium, but they're well supported as a club. They've got somebody that has got a reasonable amount of money behind them, and they've not had success. So if you were comparing them to those, they're still in the mix of the Wigans and the St Helens. That's just over the last few years they've not been quite as successful.
And there is a price you pay. What people have forgotten as well is they did make the grand final last year.
No, absolutely.
Which is probably a bad thing because now everyone goes.
But they did make the grand final. So this continued.
Did that paper over some cracks?
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
And they are at the moment probably where they deserve to be. But to almost dismiss them as being, not building something for the future and still in transition. In a transition period, they managed to win a Challenge Cup and get to a grand final. So there's huge doom and gloom there at the moment because they've lost 50-0 at home, which is one of their biggest defeats in the Super League era. But the
margins are fine in elite sport ultimately, and the margins have been fine for Leeds.
I just don't think you can tarnish.
So the women's team are good, and the wheelchair team are probably now favourites to win the grand final. So when does Rowan Smith get replaced by the Lois Fussell, James Simpson, Atchison?
I mean, again, I think it's
because obviously now it's Rowan Smith's fault and it's Gary Hetherington's.
Well, I think the
fans didn't like Brian McDermott, and look how many trophies he's won.
And he's doing all right at Newcastle now. I think the other thing,
Wigan fans didn't like Sean Wayne. They got rid of Sean Wayne because they didn't like the way
they weren't playing
successful.
It was costing a season ticket.
You can't always win, can you? That's keeping true.
And I think you're absolutely right. I think the other thing is that we've said that Tony Smith needs next season to be judged if he's moving Hull in the way he. I think Rowan Smith needs to be judged next season as well because the team that he is going to have from next season, he has now managed to get rid of all the players he doesn't think can play the way he wants to play. So Leeming and Dwyer aren't there at hooker, Austin and Caesar aren't there at halfback. The guys who are coming in, Lucky Miller, he's going to play in a spine position. This is going to be a Rowan Smith team.
Yeah, but I think that's
so. I think we judge him next year.
I agree. But I think from a Leeds fans' perspective, I suspect one of their concerns is also looking ahead to next year and looking at those signings that I think some of those Leeds fans think we ain't going to do much better next year.
Can they do short kick-offs?
Well,
like being part of
I think the other thing to throw in there, you mentioned Harry Newman. He is their X-Factor player. He's their Jack Wellesby. And he has missed a lot of the last 2 years. And part of his temperament, which is an issue, is frustration.
Well, that needs reining in.
And that again is a coach's thing. The coach needs to say, "I've said you're a star player. We will look after you. We do want you out there, but I need to do something to help you change your mentality because you're as much as a liability at the moment if you say or do the wrong thing."
Well, in fairness to James Bentley, last year
he's turned himself around.
Yeah, in fairness,
and this year,
that's what I'm saying. That last year he was always up before the beat, and this year we've hardly heard anything from him. Now whether people think he's had a better or worse season, I don't really know. But
they really missed him on Saturday.
That's what I'm trying to say. That actually you can change, and that doesn't have to. Have a negative impact on your performance. So that's why I would be saying that's the conversation I'd suppose be having.
And I think you judge the coach by does Harry Newman come out at the start of next season with a different attitude, same talent, different attitude.
Do you talking with what you do?
And it's the same with Jay Connor at Huddersfield. That everybody knows that what may hold him back from being a great player with his skill set is his temperament. So you look at the coach, you just say, look, you know, if you are going to get the best out of this asset, how are you going to manage it?
Nothing's going to change, is it, in terms of who is the coach and who is the chief executive, no matter how many people bleat about it on social media?
Again, I would go to anybody that says the coach needs changing and say, fine. So who's your first choice to take over?
It's the thing at Wakefield, isn't it? Mark Applegarth, if he hadn't been in charge at the start of the season, it would have been somebody else. Would anything have been different? No, because of the cards that were dealt to him. If he'd have had Luke Gale at the start of the season, I think things might have been different.
I think he's behaved with a lot of dignity in a very difficult situation. It's almost he was set up to fail, and I've never heard him give a press conference where he hasn't been incredibly honest and paid credit to where it was due.
You should have just blamed referees. You probably didn't watch this yesterday, but I caught the end of it. Oldham 12, North Wales Crusaders 13. 2 men sent off in the last couple of minutes for a bit of a fracas, and a drop goal for the Welsh to see them through to the final eliminator.
2 of the teams above them,
knocking out George Ford's Oldham, as they're now known, even though it's got no connection to it.
I did listen to Hunslet and Doncaster, and again, that's a great performance from Doncaster, who lost at Hunslet in the league, ended up finishing 3rd, which was pretty devastating because they'd put a lot of their irons in the fire to get automatic promotion. But again, they're another team that I think in 3 of the last 5 games hadn't conceded a point. That's the kind of form you want to take into the playoffs. So now it's Hunslet Oldham for the right to go to Doncaster for the final playoff. Hunslet North Wales.
Oldham are out now. But they signed Joe Ward
for the right to go to Doncaster, which...
yes, whether they can go 3 games on the bounce now, North Wales. It'll be interesting.
In the Championship, Barrow beat Swinton in the big game at the bottom end of the table.
Is it Swinton Whitehaven next week? That's the big game.
The new
that
big
is
game.
the big game. That is almost the loser of that is in real trouble.
Well, there's 3 teams at the bottom for me: Whitehaven, Keighley, and Swinton. It's a playoff between those 3, I think, because I think Barrow will probably be safe. They're on 17 points. Barrow play.
They play Newcastle
away this week, so you'd fancy Barrow wrapping it up from their perspective this week. So Whitehaven,
Keighley against Halifax. You'd have to say Halifax's win over Toulouse.
That's what I said last week though about Keighley's running. They play Halifax at home and then London away.
Halifax have to win to get the hope of getting back into the 6.
So I'm not sure Keighley will get another win.
But you'd have to say that game between Whitehaven and Swinton might well determine which one of them goes down.
Well, I'm sure Keighley will be praying for a Whitehaven win because that would put them on 18 points, with Swinton on 14 below Keighley, assuming Keighley lose, and then they may be reliant, if they can't get a win at London, on Swinton's last game, which is away at Halifax.
London are going to do it, aren't they? They're going to beat Fev at the Millennium Stadium and spoil the Fev story again. London beating Widnes 52-12. As mentioned, Halifax is
the form of London is something that all the other clubs in that
it's a bit Leeds-esque.
Well, more than that, you look at
not
the fact that they've got people like Corey Norman and Dean Farey, and you suddenly think they're winners. If they're fit, if they're now integrated into the way that the team want them to play, you don't want to. They're the team you don't want to play.
Based on the league table, they're 4th with 30 points, the same as Sheffield, but they're not. If you took the second half of the season, they're probably 2nd, something like that. There's not much to pick between probably them and Toulouse, I would say.
They've nothing to lose.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting that final spot, isn't it? Because you've got Bradford who lost to York, so York are back in the mix. You've got Widnes who lost, but they're still
Bradford
a point behind.
That's going to be a real test.
Batley beat Whitehaven, so they're back up and blah blah. It's exciting.
It is. It's fascinating, the Championship, because there's so many permutations.
Batley back in the 6.
Yeah.
Go columnist Craig Lingard.
Are the sportsmen going to pick up the games that aren't on, or are they going to pick them up?
They have to.
Here's the interesting thing for you, and I mentioned this on the weekend, going back to streaming again. Leeds Knights ice hockey team are playing the 2nd tier of ice hockey. There's no promotion or relegation.
Game tomorrow night, haven't they?
They might have, but they played a friendly on Saturday and they were charging £15 for a stream. The Sheffield Steelers played Nottingham at the weekend in home and away friendlies, which had a big fight in. because I love a big fight. 15 quid they were charging for a stream on both nights.
Bring back the biff.
If teams in the Championship and League One are not streaming their games at the start of next season, then they are fools.
Would our fan base pay 15 quid?
I think it's an awful lot of money, but I mean, I know, because you're right, it's a second string, that ice hockey league, isn't it, that they play in. But friends of mine go, not massively into sport, but for whatever reason they've got into ice hockey and they go watch Leeds nights regularly and they really enjoy it. But they didn't.
You've been, haven't you?
Yeah, I went, and they didn't appreciate that it was a second string. I was telling them this is like a second string and there's no like promotion, relegation and all the rest of it, and they were like, oh, okay. They didn't care. They just enjoyed the atmosphere.
There must be enough people who will pay 15 quid for them to do it. So
did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I did enjoy it. We didn't stay for the full game, though, in fairness. But I did enjoy it. But what I wanted somebody next to me to explain what was going on. But that's probably because I'm a bit of a referee, and I want to understand why things are happening. In the same way, when I was watching the England game at the weekend, I wanted a little bit more input as to why things were happening.
Which is what they should do on ITV, because they've got to understand that most of their audience don't have a bloody clue.
But then,
that's what happens on terrestrial TV.
And whilst we don't want to talk about it for any longer, there was a very interesting comment on Twitter, because I wasn't watching the game and I don't like passing comment on Twitter.
I was watching rock climbing, more exciting.
But the ITV panel had a referee who explained exactly what had happened, and the players on the panel then said they didn't agree with it.
Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, I agree. That's why I sort of tuned in to see what they would do at half time, because I'd missed the first incident, and they had JP Doyle, which I'm assuming he's no longer referees. But he would have been better placed in the studio to have a debate about it, as opposed to the referee just presenting a kind of what people...
This is why it happened.
Yeah, this is why it happened, these are the reasons, and then them just saying, well, we know that, but we don't agree with it.
I don't know if there are many £15 out there in Rugby League, but certainly there must be some tenors out there. And clubs have got to... You've got to be on the right side of it now, because obviously there's not going to be a TV deal for the Championship. We would know if there was going to be any significant deal. There might be something.
There might be some matches.
Clubs have been streaming in the past, haven't they? Particularly around COVID. Well, they weren't doing it in COVID, but I know Bradford, weren't they? Were they not on YouTube?
They were on proper sport, yeah.
So you do wonder.
I presented it at least once. Yeah, because I did the game at Hunslet because Tom wasn't there and Danny wasn't there, so they left me to do it, which was always good. And I ended up chatting in the crowd to a coach of another team in the Championship. He was asking me questions. I'm thinking, why are you asking me about it? I haven't got a bloody clue what's going on. I know he's in League One at the time, wasn't it? But that was free. Now, could it have been monetised? Yes. How do you monetise it? There must be something where someone can work out how we can make some money off it. But the problem is asking people to pay for something that they've been given for free for years, or given as part of a package for years. And for some reason, people will pay 15 quid to watch an ice hockey friendly, but they won't pay. But they're moaning about paying a tenner for a Super League game on the day.
You wonder how many people though pay 15 quid. You know,
yeah.
I think we've said it before. You've got to make it part of a digital season ticket. So you give them a mixed offer. Maybe a Championship game every week, but it's decided in advance. You don't choose who you want to watch. There will be a Championship game every week, and for your digital season ticket, you can tune in to get a really good coverage.
I mean, I was going to offer my services as a former skater hockey referee to try and explain what was going on, but Carson's even better. He's got a coaching and referee's licence for ice hockey. There's nothing you can't do, Carson. I think that's it, isn't it?
Dale Ferguson, the new coach, had used.
Yeah, and Hunter got a new coach there as well.
Yes.
Whose name I've forgotten.
Who's come from West Bowling.
Yeah. Is that Bradford?
Yes.
Red or alive?
Gary Schofield, where have all the halfbacks gone?
Where are they? Second row. We'll be back next week.
We've got French biscuits.
We've got French biscuits to celebrate the...
somebody might be going to France this weekend.
Is it Nanny McDonald? Stand it there. Can't get any better than that, can I? Come on. Although if you listen to the podcast, there's extra material coming now, so listen to after the music. The first thing to obviously ask in anything like this, Sam, is what are you doing and why?
So what we're doing a 100 kilometres walk. 11 of us, in fact, sorry, 10 of us. One guy sadly pulled out the weekend with a broken toe. And we're going from Leeds Rhinos, leaving on Friday, this Friday, so the 15th September, heading Leigh, and hoping to arrive in Hull FC, the MKM Stadium, around 10:30. If the planning goes well, around 10:30. And we're doing that to raise money, funds, and awareness for motor neuron disease. Why we're doing that? Quite simply, just really inspired by seeing the impact of this, horrible illness on Rob. Rob Burrow. That was my kind of first, understanding of MND, first experience of it. What's kind of struck me more emotionally is in the last few months since we launched the challenge, the amount of personal stories that people shared with me, and the amount of people who have experienced it, family members, friends, So it's a really, really horrible disease, and we just want to do something positive to try and help find a cure.
But why this particular challenge? 100 kilometres in a day.
Yeah, so we decided I wanted to do something kind of meaningful. I thought it's sizable enough where we'd hopefully will attract a decent level of fundraising. I've listened to obviously Kevin Sinfield talk about deciding to do some of his kind of crazy things. Yeah, and you want to get something that hopefully will get a bit of attention. So that we decided to do that. The reason we go from Leeds to Hull, I'm a lifelong Hull FC supporter. So followed Hull for 40 odd years. So the decision to kind of link the two clubs essentially with the link with obviously Rob Burrow, with Kevin Sinfield, and then we get to the MKM Stadium as it is now on the Saturday, and Hull have a game on Saturday. Hull have a game on Saturday as well. So so I'll hopefully be in a fit state for that.
As long as you get there before kickoff, then I know you're aiming for 10:30, but as long as you're there by kickoff.
Yeah, we're aiming for 10:30. We said we'd do it in under 24. I'm confident, anxious, a bit nervous, but confident we'll make that, and we'll definitely be at the game and have a few beers hopefully in the afternoon.
I mean, Kevin Sinfield's great and everything, but he's ruined everything for everyone now, isn't it? Because if you're going to do something for charity, you have to do something utterly ridiculous that no one's prepared to do. But we have to do these things now.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why we did this. We thought 100K in 24 hours. I mean, and it is. I mean, the training for it's been absolutely brutal. That's all I'd describe it. And I think the training and the personal sacrifice as well. One of my cousin's husband, Jim Harlock, he was working on rigs a couple of weeks ago. It was a key kind of phase in the training, and he basically walked round and round in circles on a helipad for a few hours a day. I mean, it's crazy. I think guys have been getting up at 4 a.m., 4:30 a.m. to go out and do 60, 70 kilometre stretches as we get ready for it. So yeah, and most of us have never done anything on that sort of scale. I 10 years ago did a bit of marathon running. A couple of the guys have a bit similar experience, but to do 100K, you realise it's tough. I mean, me and my friend Paul James is a big Wigan fan. He's been fantastic in helping me to pull this together, Paul. And me and him and another guy, we drove the route about 3 months ago. And afterwards, we sat in the pub and had a beer, and we all said, it is a long way. I mean, sat in the car for 3 or 4 hours, you think, what have we done? So yeah, it's a big challenge, and hopefully it'll help with the awareness and obviously fundraising. That's the end of the day. We're trying to raise some cash.
I mean, how hard is it to plan a route for something like this? Because obviously you can't just, the easiest thing will be at least the whole, right, that's the M62, but obviously you can't walk down the M62.
No, I mean, as I mentioned, Paul, I think Paul spent, I was going to say hours, literally days initially on, Google Maps and Google Earth. So he gave up a load of time to work it out. And then we've obviously done a kind of recce a few months ago. There's a few difficult patches as we kind of get into Hull in the early part of the morning. So a lot of effort around kind of planning the safety for that is obviously critical. The main goal is to get everybody back safe and hopefully everybody finish in the 100. But safety is obviously number one.
And what are the challenges you're expecting? Because obviously when you start off, you're full of adrenaline or whatever, but when you walk in, I guess 2-3 in the morning, that's. I mean, I guess you're hoping for the nice weather, not the weather we've got at the moment in the UK, which is ridiculously hot. You want something, I don't know, kind of mild. I don't know, no rain. Obviously.
Yeah, we do. I mean, I actually live in Paris, France. So I've had some pretty hot weather. Even recently, it's been incredible. Even doing some of the shorter walks. Now, I think the mental side of this is potentially. Maybe not so, but it's on balance certainly with the physical side. I went out and did 70k a couple of weeks ago, and you kind of hit patches at 40k where you think, what am I doing? It's Saturday, and I could still be in bed. I've got an early start. Yeah, but certainly the mental side is really hard. So the idea is really to work as a team. We're gonna have to we want everybody to get through it. So we'll just switch up. Buddy people up, different conversations. We're hoping we've got a few people coming along to do certain stretches with us to give us a kind of boost. Some of the pubs, we've got 8 or 9 stops on the route. So some of the pubs have been great. I think it's the shipping at West Cowick at around 45k. I think they're putting on some food for us and some butties and stuff. So little things and along the way. But the mental side. Brutally tough, I think.
I think that's one of the things we've seen from all of Kevin Sinfield's challenges from the documentaries and such is how important the people around him are. Not just it's not just him doing the thing. Obviously, he doesn't want the attention, but he does the thing, and there's so many people around him helping him get there. It's that teamwork that what he and Rob Burrow did on the field being taken into these other spheres.
Yeah, absolutely, and we've been fortunate in that respect. We've had some real offers of help. So we obviously got people doing support work, support driving. Yesterday we had a real bit of bad news because there's a couple who are going to help us, and due to illness they've had to sadly pull out. But again, in terms of finding that sort of team spirit, one of the guys got onto one of his friends, and within 2 hours we've got somebody who's willing to drive from 7 p.m. to 6 a.m. Overnight. So that's a massive help. And I think families has been great as well. My wife has banned me talking about the walk. Once it's done, she banned me on holiday for a couple of days, but it's been quite obsessive. And, the support from family members in terms of time sacrifice and being totally distracted with it, is massive. And that's most of the guys who are doing it would say the same.
So when you get to Hull at 10:30 on Saturday morning, you're not thinking, right, here's what we're going to do next. We're going to go 200 kilometres or something even more ridiculous.
I had that conversation yesterday. We're fortunate where we live, actually, is obviously with France hosting the World Cup. So the Tonga team are actually staying just down the road. So we had a couple of beers afterwards in the garden. I said that to my wife. So I think that our next one, if we could do maybe 100 miles. And she's like, there's no way, you're not doing another one. A big part of it, it's all self-organised. It's what I probably haven't said, So I think if I did another one, I'd probably join an organised event and just take some of the stress away, to be honest. But yeah, we'll see. I've got my eye on doing something else, definitely. I've enjoyed it. The training, I've enjoyed the training. It's hard and painful and blisters and stuff, but, I've enjoyed it.
It's amazing the impact that one man has had on pretty much on all of us who are involved in rugby league in some shape or form. Who we're not related to, we don't know him personally, but it's amazing how the way he acted on the pitch and the way he's acting now has inspired so many people to do ridiculous things like this, and that's a testament to him and obviously his friendship with Kevin Sinfield.
Yeah, it's just incredible, isn't it? It's absolutely incredible, and for me, that's what inspires me, just to see the impact of this on Rob Burrow, and then to see, how that kind of Leeds team, which are all clearly great guys, kind of have rallied and pulled together, and it's quite incredible. Again, the impact. How Kevin's not been knighted yet is a mystery to me, but hopefully that's coming. But I'm a Hull FC diehard Hull FC supporter. I've stood on the terraces and booed those guys plenty of times over the years. Probably give them what's for. But at the end of the day, it's part of the rugby league community, and Rob and Kevin, all them guys were the legends of the sport. What they got, 6 grand final medals, probably more. It's incredible.
Yeah, try not to keep count of it. It's too depressing.
I'll see about that. Yeah, it is for me. Yeah. We're just like one.
Well, you got a couple of Challenge Cups, batsman. Wasn't it?
Yeah.
How can people support you emotionally, financially? Obviously, one of those is more important, I guess.
Really important, yeah. So, obviously, we're departing Headingley promptly at 11 o'clock. That's if everything goes well. So, if anybody is around or near the Headingley area on Friday morning, so that's this Friday, the 15th September, that would be fantastic. We've got a route which is on our Facebook pages, but it essentially takes us through Leeds, Castleford, Eggborough, then Goole, North Cave, and into Hull. So anyone along the route, great. We'll be having collection buckets, etc. The big one, obviously, is our Just Giving page. So we've raised just under 17,000 so far, which is obviously a sizable amount of money. I'd like to get a bit more. So the Just Giving page is www.justgiving.com/team 100 km in a day, and then you just select a team member to sponsor. So if you sponsor me, that's good. Any of the guys.
Hopefully as if by magic, that link should appear on the screen. It'll certainly be in the description of the video below. Simon, we wish you all the best, and ridiculous things. I'd like to think that I could do something like this, but I've not got the fortitude or the ability or anything like this. So I am in awe of anyone who does anything like this. Best of luck to you and the team. I hope you have a safe walk, and there's no problems, and the weather is much nicer than it, well, much more comfortable than it is now, and that you get a big reception both at Leeds on Saturday and Hull on Leeds on Friday and Hull on Saturday morning.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and I really appreciate you, helping to do that bit of promotion for us and having me on the show. It's massively appreciated. Could I just say one thank you to Gaz Ellis? Gaz Ellis announced that he's going to leave Hull FC at the end of this season, which is obviously a huge loss. You mentioned the Challenge Cups. Gaz was obviously instrumental in us winning those cups, and they certainly changed my life and many others for the rest of our lives. So much appreciated to Gaz, and good luck whatever he's doing in the future.
As a Wakefield supporter, you wouldn't believe how good a number 6 he was when he was forced to play at standoff. But I look forward to reading about that in his book. So do I. Simon, thanks, all the best, and we will be cheering you on in spirit, if not in person. But I'm sure some of our viewers will try and get out and see you at 3 o'clock in the morning, wherever you are in Gould or somewhere.
I hope so. Brilliant. Thanks a lot, mate.